If you are an influential person, a powerful person, you can expect that every once in a while there will be a sort of puff piece written about you, a profile they call it, where very much from your point of view, a story is told about the work that you're doing. We have an example of that, and it involves the chairman for the Democratic National Committee, Tom Perez. Now, I wanna just walk you through a little bit of this New York Times profile. This is literally the first couple of sentences of the profile. Some Democrats say the party's presidential debate stage is too big. Some say it's too small. Some say it's too white. Nothing the Democratic National Committee Chairman Tom Perez does is just right. I just think that's funny. So they quote him as saying, I've had days where I've gotten calls, literally one after another, from person A, who I have great respect for, who said, you've got to help, we need a narrower field. Then person B calls saying, the field is too narrow. Can you imagine getting 2 phone calls? Actually, I really do find phone calls annoying, so I feel for him a little bit, but it's like, this is all about how everyone's being too mean to you, and your example is that 2 people disagree and they spoke to you about it.
Also, I mean, when you really think about it, who argues that the Democratic field is too narrow? I would argue it's the people who think, oh damn, we put our bet, like all of our bets were on Biden, but Biden's flailing a little bit.
Devil's advocate,
yeah.
I think what that might be a reference to is the lack of diversity on the stage. They don't mean that the field is too narrow, but that the debate stage is now too narrow. Maybe that's what they mean.
Yeah.
But let me read a little bit more because this is basically, I'm just reading for you the beginning of the article. I'm not like cutting, it's not like 30 pages and I'm finding a couple of things, but take a look at this. Being a national chairman for the party that doesn't hold the White House is among the worst jobs in American politics. It's a high profile position with little power. There's endless grief from fretting party regulars and nonstop comparisons to the president's party, which has the president himself as its chief fundraiser. Look, Tom Perez is a person, and so, he has like natural human dignity and everything. And so I feel for everyone whose job is difficult. But cry me a river, what are you talking about? You have power. It goes on to say that he didn't want it. Okay, well you ran for it, you've got it. You can do things.
Wait. He's arguing that he didn't want it?
He says that he didn't initially want to run for chairman of the DNC, but Obama convinced him not to run in some race. I forget exactly which it was. In return, you should go for the head of the DNC, and so he did. Beating out, oddly enough, a couple of people, including Pete Buttigieg.
Okay, does anyone else, like let's say we believe what he's saying there, that's how it all played out. Does anyone else find it strange that there's all these like backroom deals happening, right? Where it's like, no, that position, we were thinking that would be better suited for so-and-so. And so we're gonna go ahead and have you run for, that's not how a democracy is supposed to work, right? I mean, you're supposed to have people running for positions that they feel passionately about, positions where they represent a group of people or a constituency or whatever it is. Like, I don't like these backroom deals that happen. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, look, he had worked under the Obama administration. Maybe Obama was like, he is the guy. But also maybe he's like, I don't want him to beat my guy, and so don't run in that race. Instead, just go do this other thing.
And that stuff happens all the time. It happens when it comes to endorsements. It happens when it comes to running for Congress.
I get it. Everybody wishes that they had more power or whatever. But it's like, articles are about what you write, but they're also about what you leave out. And this is a person who, whether he wanted it or not, whether he feels like he has enough power or not, he is an important and powerful person in the Democratic Party. And so, like, I get the New York Times, maybe it's an access thing, is gonna write like sympathetic pieces about him. But I think that considering the political context that we're in right now, considering the stakes in the next election, literally the last thing that we should be wasting our time on, or the New York Times should be wasting its space on, is crying tears for Tom Perez, who feels like people are being mean to him. Are we not living in a country where like people are crushed under student loan debt and feel like the healthcare system is failing them? And like, I could go on and on. All of those stories hypothetically could be written about.
Look, working in politics is not fun for anybody, especially in this climate. But you're right. I mean, you have to be able to put things in perspective. And that's something that I feel like even in the positions that we have to keep in mind, right? On the worst days, you kind of have to take a step back and remind yourself like, A, why you're doing, what you're fighting for, and how even when you feel like everything's coming down on you like a ton of bricks, which at this moment it does feel like that, there are people out there who are literally living on the streets with their kids.
Yeah.
Right? So however tough you think you have it, just keep in mind, like what motivated you to be part of politics? Was it to actually change things? Because he's in a position of power where he could change things, where he could do the right thing. So rather than crying about how mean people are to you here and there, let's talk about the kind of power you have and how you can actually utilize it for good.
Yeah. Now, we did learn one thing here, or at least give an indication how things might develop in the primary, and that is that there are concerns about the qualifying criteria to get on the debate stage. Now, they acknowledge here that initially, when these criteria were rolled out, the heads of all of the campaigns agreed to them. So just bear that in mind. That doesn't mean that they liked them, but they did agree to them. But it has been like more than 6 months now. And some people have had an easy time qualifying for all of these. Like Bernie Sanders, it doesn't matter where you put the threshold for donors, he's going to get on the stage. But some people haven't. And some people, like billionaires for instance, can find tricky pizzicky ways to pretend that they have a base of support effectively. And so he's indicating that later on they may scrap the thresholds altogether, or substitute early state results, or use a combination of both as qualifying metrics for the 5 debates the party's planning for February, March, and April. I mean, I certainly think that at that point, early state showings matter, but some candidates are not expecting to do very well in those early states and think that states, more like South Carolina, it's one of the earlier ones, but Super Tuesday competing really well in California or the South or something like that. So it is difficult to decide because you don't want to make it entirely dependent on Iowa and New Hampshire. I don't think many people would want that.
Right, look, I think that it's a difficult balancing act, but there needs to be a decision made that would actually give serious candidates who actually have a shot enough time to talk about their proposals rather than scramble for a soundbite that would make the news afterwards. I think that right now, so far the debates have been disappointing for the vast majority of Americans who want to hear real solutions to serious problems that they have. And it's difficult to do that when you have 10 or more people up on that stage, right? So I don't know what the right criteria is. And I'm not, that's not my expertise. That's why I'm not in a position like that. But there needs to be a decision made that makes sense and it needs to happen soon. Otherwise, we're gonna be wasting all this time with people who aren't really serious.
I feel a little bit differently than I did about it a month ago or so. I think it's still fairly early on. I think there's a lot of time to make the debate stage smaller. And the reason I say that is we have seen a lot of motion in the polls over the past few months with people rising and falling and even dropping out way earlier than we would think. And that sort of thing, I think having enough people to influence that process is still worthwhile. I do think that it's sort of silly when like Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden together have a big portion of the total support and they get a relatively tiny portion of the time when you have 10 people. They do get the most, but out of the whole, so it's difficult. I think that we can get through at least the first 4 states before any concern about cutting it significantly. It's a bizarre election having this many people, honestly.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.